What if the world's most arrogant boxer, undefeated and unstoppable, faced a woman who had nothing to lose and everything to prove? Victor the Beast Donovan, known for humiliating every opponent that steps into the ring with him, is about to face someone who doesn't fear his strength or his reputation. She's not here for fame or glory. She's here for something far more personal, a battle of willpower, strategy, and survival. Tonight, in front of thousands, an unexpected challenge will reveal what true strength really means. In the next few minutes, you're about to witness a battle like no other one, where raw strength meets relentless determination. This isn't just a fight. It's a journey of unexpected twists, where the most underestimated fighter will defy all odds. You'll watch as Victor the Beast Donovan, the undefeated champion, faces a woman who isn't just fighting for a title, but for her very own redemption. Prepare for shocking revelations, a story of resilience, and a climax that will leave you questioning everything about power and pride. By the end, you'll realize the true strength doesn't always come from the fists, but from the heart. The night was electric, buzzing with the energy of thousands of fans packed into the arena. The air was thick with excitement, the kind of anticipation that could only come from a champion's fight, one that promised to deliver blood, sweat, and victory. The spotlights illuminated the center of the ring, casting shadows across the canvas, as Victor the Beast Donovan made his entrance. Victor was a mountain of a man, muscular, towering, and unshakable. Every step he took echoed through the arena, a symbol of power that had earned him his title as the reigning champion. His face was a mask of arrogance, a smirk that said it all. He had never lost a fight, and he wasn't about to start now. The crowd erupted in deafening cheers as he flexed his arms, showing off the physique that had become as legendary as his undefeated record. His eyes scanned the crowd, drinking in their adoration. He loved the attention, the power, the validation. This was his world, and no one was going to take it from him. But tonight, something was different. Tonight, there was someone else stepping into the ring, someone who didn't seem to belong. The audience murmured as a simple figure appeared from the shadows of Lisa Green. She wasn't flashy. There were no grand entrances, no team of cheerleaders hyping up the crowd. Just Eliza. Her hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, and her white tank top and blue shorts were a stark contrast to the extravagant gear worn by most fighters. To the casual observer, she was nothing more than a random challenger, woman with no reputation in a world dominated by men. Her eyes were calm, focused, but there was something else, something unspoken, a fire burning behind them that Victor didn't see at first. Eliza climbed into the ring, a quiet intensity surrounding her. The crowd, unsure what to make of her, exchanged confused looks. Victor's smirk only grew wider. He couldn't help himself. "This is going to be easy," he muttered under his breath, eyeing her like a lion sizing up a mouse. His arrogance radiated through the arena, and for a moment, it felt like the fight was already won before it had even begun. But Eliza wasn't here for that. She wasn't here for the crowd, the fame, or the glory. She was here for something deeper, something more personal. She had a past that was far from glamorous. Her life had been shaped by hardship, pain, and loss, experiences that Victor couldn't even begin to understand. She wasn't just fighting for a win. She was fighting for redemption. As she took her position, the crowd continued to murmur, still uncertain about her. The bright lights above cast a soft glow on her face, but there was no fear in her expression. In her mind, the stakes were clear. This was the moment she had been preparing for. The moment she would show the world and herself that strength came from more than just power. It came from something more profound. The bell rang with a sharp clang that echoed throughout the arena. Victor, the Beast, Donovan, standing in the corner of the ring, cracked his knuckles, flexing his fists as the crowd's cheers reverberated around him. He was a man built for this moment, a gladiator born for battle. His steely eyes locked on Eliza across the ring. She wasn't even looking at him in the same way. She wasn't sizing him up. She wasn't intimidated. And that confused Victor more than he'd like to admit. Eliza stood perfectly still in her corner, her chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. She seemed calm, too calm for someone about to face the unstoppable Victor, but her hands were slightly clenched at her sides, her fingers curling and uncurling, readying for something that wasn't entirely visible to the audience. As Victor took a step forward, his boots thudding against the canvas with the same heavy certainty as his fists, a sense of quiet danger surrounded Eliza. She wasn't merely waiting for the fight to begin. She was preparing for it in a way Victor had never seen before. Victor had spent years breaking men down in the ring, bruising their bodies bending their will, making them beg for mercy. Tonight, it would be no different. Eliza was just another challenger, one who would fall like the rest. But something gnawed at him, a feeling he couldn't quite shake. Victor had been used to facing fighters who would cower at the mere sight of him. Yet, here was this woman, standing across from him, unflinching, like she had already seen the worst the world had to offer, and still remained standing. The fight began. Victor's first punch came like a storm, a direct right hook aimed squarely at Eliza's face. The crowd's gasps filled the air, waiting to witness her destruction. But Eliza was already moving. She sidestepped with an almost supernatural fluidity, her body gliding out of the way as Victor's fist sliced through the air. Victor was momentarily taken aback. The punch had been perfectly executed, a textbook move, and yet she had avoided it as if she knew it was coming. Victor took another step, more determined than before. He lunged forward with another wild swing, but once again, Eliza was gone. In a blink, she dodged with a slight pivot of her foot, effortlessly evading the force of his blow. The crowd, unsure of what they were witnessing, grew quiet. A small group of gasps echoed across the stands, mixed with whispers. "She's not even trying to hit him. She's just dodging," someone in the crowd muttered. Victor growled, frustrated, and charged again, throwing punch after punch, each one heavier than the last. His anger began to build, the pressure mounting with every failed strike. But still, Eliza didn't engage. She wasn't fighting back in the conventional sense. She was evading slipping through his attacks, like water. Every movement she made was calculated, deliberate, as though she were analyzing Victor's every action, his every breath, his every twitch. And Victor, he was growing more irritated by the second. He couldn't land a clean hit. Every punch was met with air, and every step closer he got to her seemed to only get him further away. "She's just toying with me," Victor thought, tightening his jaw, the sense of anger turning into something darker, something he wasn't accustomed to feeling. He wasn't used to being outwitted, outmaneuvered. He was the master of the ring. He controlled the pace, not her. Eliza, on the other hand, had already begun to sense something Victor didn't, the weight of his arrogance. Victor wasn't just a boxer. He was a man who lived on his reputation, and reputation his ego. His pride had been his strength and his weakness. With every punch he missed, with every moment he let his anger take control, he was losing something critical, his focus. The crowd continued to murmur in confusion. They had expected to see the destruction of an underdog, the predictable crushing of someone who wasn't worthy of sharing the ring with Victor. But Eliza, she wasn't what they had imagined. She wasn't backing down. She wasn't afraid. "She's not even trying to fight back," one spectator whispered, and they were right. Eliza wasn't focused on knocking Victor out in the traditional sense. She had a different strategy, one built on endurance, observation, and patience. Every time Victor missed, every time his muscles tensed with frustration, Eliza took mental notes. She had spent years training, not to overpower, but to outlast. Victor's punches, while powerful, followed a pattern. They were predictable. The way he shifted his weight, the subtle flick of his wrist before each swing, all spoke to her in a language of its own. She understood the rhythm of his attacks, and she was biding her time. And then, Victor made a mistake. As he lunged forward once again with a vicious right hook, Eliza saw it. The opening. Victor had overcommitted. He had swung too wide, and for the first time in the match, Victor's balance wavered. His body was too forward, too exposed, and in that instant, something shifted in Eliza. Her eyes narrowed. She took a small, subtle step back, and just as Victor's punch sailed past her, she grabbed his wrist, spinning him effortlessly around. The audience gasped. Victor's feet tangled beneath him as Eliza used his own force against him, flipping him slightly off balance. He stumbled, trying to regain his footing, but Eliza was already one step ahead. With a lightning-fast move, she snapped her foot up to his midsection, pushing him backward with just enough force to send him crashing against the ropes. Victor's face twisted in confusion, but Eliza wasn't done. Her eyes locked onto his, and for the first time since the fight began, she spoke, her voice low, but cutting through the tension of the arena. "You're losing your focus. That's your mistake," she said. For a brief moment, Victor stood still, his chest heaving, staring at her with disbelief. No one had ever spoken to him like that in the ring. No one had ever dared to outmaneuver him so effortlessly, and yet here she was, doing just that. It wasn't just the fight he was losing now, it was control. And that more than any punch, was something Victor couldn't bear. His mind raced, but Eliza's calm, calculated presence remained like a shadow behind him. He had underestimated her, and now he was paying the price. As Victor fought to regain his composure, his frustration began to spill over. His punches became less controlled, more desperate. Eliza, however, continued to dance around him, never getting too close, never engaging in a direct confrontation. She wasn't playing his game. She was forcing him into hers, game of patience, precision, and endurance. The ring had become a battlefield of wills, and Victor was beginning to feel the weight of every missed punch. His breath grew heavier with each passing second, his chest rising and falling as he glared at Eliza, who was still as composed as ever. Her movements were precise, graceful, and deliberate, like a chess player who had already planned 5 moves ahead. She wasn't rushing. She wasn't panicking. She was waiting. Victor, on the other hand, was burning with frustration. His fists were tired, his muscles sore, but his pride was bruised, and it hurt far more than any punch ever could. The crowd, initially skeptical of Eliza, had now become transfixed by her ability to stay in the fight. No one had expected this Victor, the indomitable champion, struggling to land a blow against a woman who was practically dancing around him. There was something unsettling about it, something that gnawed at Victor deep in his gut. He had faced opponents who had crumbled under pressure, but this woman wasn't crumbling. She was making him look foolish. Victor wiped the sweat from his brow with a fierce swipe and tried to steady himself. This wasn't like the other fights. He could feel the eyes of the crowd boring into him, the whispers growing louder with every passing second. He had to end this. He had to show them who was in control. He surged forward again, determined to end it with one devastating blow. But Eliza was ready. She slipped past him with the same ease as before, her feet barely making a sound on the canvas. Victor's punch connected with nothing but air. His left foot caught the edge of the ring, and for a split second, he lost his balance. That moment, just a fraction of a second, was all Eliza needed. She reacted faster than anyone could have expected. Before Victor could even process his slip, Eliza was on him. She didn't go for a wild punch like everyone assumed she would. Instead, she grabbed his arm, twisted it with precision, and used the momentum to pull him off balance again. Victor's body lurched forward, but Eliza's grip on him was ironclad, controlling his every movement. She pushed him into the ropes once more, his back slamming against the tight cords that separated him from the crowd. Victor gasped for air, disoriented by the sudden shift in momentum. He hadn't expected this, not from someone like her. But Eliza wasn't giving him time to regroup. She was relentless, a quiet storm that wasn't interested in showing off. She was interested in one thing, victory, and she wasn't about to let Victor's reputation stop her. "Still think this is going to be easy?" Eliza whispered, her voice low but carrying across the ring, loud enough for Victor to hear. The words hung in the air, sharp as knives, cutting through Victor's ego. He clenched his jaw, glaring at her, as if daring her to continue. But deep inside, a flicker of doubt began to creep into his mind. No one had ever dared to speak to him like that. No one had ever fought him this way. Eliza wasn't just physically challenging him. She was mentally breaking him down, piece by piece. His mind raced, and for the first time in his career, Victor wasn't thinking about the win. He was thinking about how to stop the pain of his own ego from cracking wide open. How could he regain control? How could he salvage his reputation when this woman, this simple woman, who had no business being in the ring with him, was steadily stripping him of it? Eliza stepped back, her eyes not leaving his. She moved like a predator who had already stalked her prey, waiting for the right moment to strike. She wasn't rushing. She wasn't panicking. She had already read Victor's every move, and she knew that patience would be her weapon. Victor's fists clenched at his sides. His pride burned hotter than ever. He wasn't going to let this happen. He wasn't going to let her walk away. The Victor dodged with a roar. Victor lunged at Eliza, throwing another powerful right hook. He wasn't thinking anymore. He was acting, purely on instinct. His movements were wild, desperate, but Eliza was already one step ahead. She ducked low, her body sinking like a leaf in the wind, avoiding the punch with the same graceful agility she had displayed all night. Victor, exhausted from his failed attack, stumbled forward, overextending himself. This was his chance. Eliza didn't hesitate. As Victor faltered, she drove a knee into his ribs, knocking the wind out of him. The crowd gasped. It was quick, it was calculated, and Victor couldn't recover fast enough. He doubled over, gasping for air, his ribs aching from the sudden impact. For the first time, Victor was truly shaken. His knees wobbled slightly, and the crowd fell silent, unsure of what was happening. Eliza didn't give him time to recover. She was on him again, her movements a blur of speed and precision. She swung a quick jab toward his face, landing it just under his eye, and followed it up with a crisp uppercut that caught Victor off guard. The punch connected solidly with his chin, sending a jolt through his body. Victor staggered backward, his vision swimming. He couldn't believe it. She was doing it. She was breaking him down. The crowd was in disbelief. The champion, the man who had never been touched, was now struggling. They watched as Eliza calmly circled him, moving with the grace of a dancer, her focus unshaken. Every time Victor tried to land a punch, she evaded it with effortless fluidity. Victor was tired. Now, his muscles were stiff, his energy drained, and his arrogance had crumbled into frustration. Eliza had not only endured the storm, she had turned it into something she could control. She had made him her prey, and she wasn't going to let him escape. Victor swung again, slower now, but Eliza was too fast. She grabbed his arm, twisting it again, this time sending him crashing to the ground. Victor's pride couldn't take it. He had never been knocked down like this, and he felt a wave of humiliation wash over him. He tried to push himself up, but his legs felt weak. His arms trembled as he struggled to regain his footing. The audience, once skeptical, now sat in stunned silence, their eyes glued to the scene unfolding before them. Eliza stood over Victor, her expression unreadable, but her eyes burned with an intensity he could no longer ignore. "Stay down," she said quietly, almost as if she were talking to herself. Victor's head throbbed. His pride, once unshakable, was now in tatters. He had underestimated her. He had underestimated the quiet strength of someone who wasn't just fighting for a title or a paycheck. She was fighting for something far more powerful, her own redemption. The crowd continued to watch in stunned silence as Victor struggled to get up. Eliza didn't move. She just stood there, her breathing steady, waiting for him to make his move. And Victor, he knew that the battle was no longer about fists. It was about the soul. And right now, his was being crushed under the weight of a woman who had nothing left to lose. Victor the Beast Donovan had been defeated before, if only in his mind. This was a different kind of fight, though it wasn't about skill or strength. It wasn't about the physical blows that defined every other match he had ever fought. This time, it was personal. This time, it was about something Victor had never truly considered. Respect, as Eliza's last jab connected with his ribs, sending a shooting pain through his torso. Victor collapsed against the ropes. His vision blurred for a moment, and his legs felt as if they might give out from beneath him. The arena, once alive with roars of excitement, now felt like an oppressive silence pressing down on him. He wiped his face with the back of his hand, trying to clear the fog from his mind. He had always been the one in control. He had always been the one to make the first move, to decide the pace. But here, in this ring, the woman who had no reason to be here was making him question everything he knew about himself. Eliza wasn't just avoiding him anymore. She wasn't just outlasting him. She was playing with him, and Victor hated it. He had never been the one to falter in a fight. No one had ever made him second-guess his power, his skill, or his dominance. But Eliza was different. She had seen the cracks in his facade. She had already picked him apart in ways no one else ever had. He couldn't let this continue. He needed to regain control. He needed to show the world and himself that he wasn't finished. The lights overhead felt almost blinding now, as though the arena itself was pressuring him to make a move. Victor's breath came in labored gasps, and the sweat that poured down his face stung his eyes. "I'm not done yet," Victor muttered under his breath. His voice, hoarse and weak, was almost drowned out by the thumping in his chest. He was fighting not just to win the match, but to maintain the image he had spent years cultivating. He pushed off the ropes and stood up straight, his body protesting with every movement. His muscles were heavy, fatigued, but he had a reputation to uphold. He couldn't let Eliza have the upper hand for much longer. "Let's see if you can keep dancing when I actually start hitting you," he growled, his voice thick with contempt. Victor wasn't one to back down from a challenge, especially one that made him feel so small. His pride had been wounded, and there was nothing more dangerous than an injured ego. The next round would be different. The bell rang again, a crisp, cold sound that snapped Victor's focus back to the present. The fight wasn't over, not yet. Victor's body surged forward with renewed energy, fueled by rage and desperation. His legs burned with each step as he launched himself toward Eliza. He had no intention of letting her toy with him any longer. This time, he would land a blow. This time, he would show her just how powerful he truly was. But Eliza was already moving. She was already one step ahead. As Victor closed the distance, Eliza didn't flinch. She didn't even appear to be trying to dodge him in the traditional way. No, instead, she stood still, allowing Victor's rage to propel him closer, feeding his own momentum. Just as he was about to deliver a crushing blow, Eliza's eyes flashed, with the clarity of someone who understood exactly what was about to happen. With a sudden, fluid motion, she sidestepped Victor's charge and grabbed his outstretched arm. She didn't waste any time. She spun him around with a seamless fluidity, using his momentum against him. Victor, caught completely off guard, couldn't even brace himself for the impact. His feet tangled with the canvas, and before he could react, his back collided with the cold, unforgiving ropes once again. The force of the impact knocked the wind out of him, and for a moment, he was left gasping for breath. He felt the ropes tighten around him, his chest heaving as he struggled to regain his composure. His heart pounded in his ears. This was no longer just about the fight, it was about something more primal, something buried deep beneath the surface. He wasn't just being outboxed, he was being humiliated, and he couldn't stand it. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, almost like a low hum in the background, echoing in Victor's ears. Their doubt, their disbelief, it all hit him like a ton of bricks. This wasn't supposed to happen. He was supposed to be the one dominating. He was supposed to be the one walking out of this ring victorious. But now, every move he made only served to deepen his growing frustration. Through the haze of his own rage, Victor saw Eliza standing calmly, as if she hadn't just thrown him off balance for the second time that night. She wasn't even breathing heavily. She didn't look like she had been in a fight at all. She looked unaffected, and that, more than anything, sent a chill through Victor's spine. Eliza wasn't playing by the same rules. She wasn't overwhelmed by his power or his experience. She wasn't afraid of him. That realization struck Victor harder than any punch he had ever taken. She didn't care about his reputation. She didn't care about the hype. She wasn't afraid of the legend of Victor, the Beast Donovan. She was here to do one thing, win. And she wasn't going to stop until she did. "I told you, you're losing your focus," Eliza said, her voice steady and calm. She stepped forward, closing the distance between them with measured steps, each one a reminder that she had the upper hand. She wasn't in a hurry. She wasn't rushing. Victor's fists clenched tighter. His mind was foggy, clouded by the realization that his arrogance had cost him more than he could have ever anticipated. Every move he made was being read, every punch avoided, every strike calculated. Eliza had figured him out. And now, in the heart of the ring, with the eyes of the crowd on him, Victor was forced to confront something he hadn't in years: vulnerability. He lunged again, a desperate jab aimed at Eliza's face, his last attempt at regaining the upper hand. But Eliza was too fast. She slipped past him effortlessly and landed a precise punch to his side, one that felt like it had cracked through his ribs. Victor gasped, his breath hitching in his throat. He hadn't expected the pain to hit him so hard. His vision blurred momentarily, and for the first time in the fight, his legs faltered. His knees buckled under the weight of his own exhaustion. He had lost control. Eliza stepped back, watching him carefully, her eyes sharp and unwavering. She wasn't gloating, she wasn't taunting, she was waiting. Waiting for the inevitable. She had already taken the measure of Victor Donovan. She knew that once he lost his focus, once he lost his calm, he would be finished. And Victor was finished. The crowd was silent now. The once roaring cheers had been replaced with stunned disbelief. No one had ever seen Victor struggle like this, let alone lose to someone like Eliza. And yet, here she was, standing tall, poised, and calm. Her strategy having worked flawlessly. Victor couldn't breathe. His pride, once unshakable, had crumbled to dust. He had been broken by someone who had no reason to be in the ring with him. Someone who, in the end, was proving that strength wasn't about physical power or dominance. It was about control, about patience, about understanding the moment when to strike. Eliza had found his weakness, and she had exploited it. Victor looked up at her, his eyes wide with disbelief. This wasn't how it was supposed to end. Not like this. Not with him on the floor, gasping for air, unable to defend himself. But the fight was already over, and Eliza had won. Victor's world had started to fracture. His fists, once powerful and precise, now seemed to betray him. His body, which had once been an unmovable fortress, was breaking down. His breath came in ragged gasps, his chest heaving under the weight of exhaustion. The pain in his ribs was sharp, and the shame that was even sharper. Eliza stood before him, poised, calm, and in control. Her movements were still fluid, effortless, like she had all the time in the world. She wasn't panting. She wasn't even sweating much, while Victor looked like a warrior on the brink of collapse. She was the picture of serenity, a stark contrast to the chaos of the fight. And then, for the first time since the fight had begun, Eliza spoke, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "You still don't get it, do you?" Victor's vision was blurred, his legs shaking beneath him. He wanted to shout back, to curse at her, to let his rage burn brighter than the shame. But something stopped him. It was that same something that had been gnawing at him since the first round. The realization that, in this moment, Eliza wasn't just fighting for a win. She wasn't even fighting to beat him. She was fighting to destroy the image he had built for himself, destroy the very thing that had been the source of all his power. His arrogance. Victor took a step forward, but his legs faltered, and he had to catch himself on the ropes. He could hear the murmur of the crowd around him, their voices barely rising above a whisper. They weren't cheering anymore. No one was chanting his name. They were waiting, and for the first time, Victor hated the silence. He hated that they weren't afraid of him. Eliza stepped closer, her eyes never leaving his. "You thought you were invincible," she said, her voice low, but filled with quiet strength. "You thought the fear you instilled in others was enough to keep you on top forever. But you didn't understand one thing. Fear doesn't win fights. Respect does." Victor's mind swirled with anger. He couldn't take it anymore. Every word she spoke was another blow to his pride. "Shut up," he growled, trying to steady himself. His hands were shaking. The frustration was overwhelming. But Eliza wasn't done. She moved even closer, and for the first time, Victor felt the full weight of her presence. It wasn't just her physicality. It was something far deeper. It was the calmness with which she stood before him. The quiet assurance that she had already won. Even before the fight had started, she raised her chin slightly, meeting his gaze. And Victor saw something flicker in her eyes, something that chilled him to the bone. It wasn't malice or anger. It was a quiet, resolute strength that he had never encountered before. It wasn't about destroying him in the ring. It was about dismantling the myth he had built around himself. "Let's finish this," Eliza said, her voice cool and composed. She wasn't taunting him. She wasn't mocking him. She was merely stating a fact. She had the fight in her hands now. Victor was no longer the one in control. Victor, desperate to redeem himself, launched at her again. This time, his fists were wild, no longer measured or deliberate. They were desperate swings, fueled by rage and panic. But Eliza, calm, graceful, and precise, was already anticipating him. With a flick of her wrist, she dodged his blows effortlessly. The crowd had gone silent, watching in stunned disbelief. Every time Victor swung, Eliza sidestepped, her movements fluid as water. Victor's exhaustion was becoming more apparent with every miss, his body slow and clumsy compared to the finesse with which Eliza moved. She wasn't just avoiding him. She was controlling the tempo now. She was the one calling the shots. The realization struck Victor like a ton of bricks. He wasn't just fighting a woman anymore. He was fighting his own arrogance, his own ego. He had spent so many years feeding off the fear of others, believing that intimidation was the key to victory. But Eliza, she had seen through all of it. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't intimidated. She had never been afraid of him. In that moment, Victor's mind shifted. The clarity was both terrifying and liberating. He wasn't going to win. The only thing left for him to do now was to accept it. But the shame, the anger, the frustration, it was all too much. He lashed out again, a desperate, wild swing that caught nothing but air. Eliza didn't need to move this time. She was already positioned just behind him. As Victor stumbled forward, overbalanced and exhausted, she placed one foot behind his, guiding his body to the ground with ease. Victor's body slammed against the canvas with a loud thud. The impact reverberated through the ring. He lay there, gasping for air, his hands stretched out as if begging for the strength to get up. But he couldn't. He couldn't find the energy, the resolve, or the pride to rise. For a moment, it seemed like time stood still. The arena was frozen in silence, every spectator holding their breath. The most feared fighter in the world, Victor Donovan, was lying on the ground, defeated by a woman who had never once flinched. Eliza stood over him, her expression unchanged, her chest rising and falling steadily as she caught her breath. She hadn't just beaten him physically. She had broken him mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. The referee began the count, but Victor didn't move. He didn't even try to get up. He was beaten not just by Eliza, but by the realization that his own arrogance had been his downfall. His eyes flickered up at her, and for the first time, he saw her not as an opponent, but as a reflection of everything he had failed to understand. True strength was not born from the ability to intimidate, but from the ability to endure. The count reached 10. Victor remained on the canvas. The bell rang, and the crowd erupted in a mixture of disbelief and awe. Eliza had done it. She had defeated the invincible champion. But it wasn't just a victory for her, it was a victory for everyone who had ever been underestimated, overlooked, or dismissed. Eliza raised her hand in quiet triumph, not out of arrogance, but out of respect for the fight. She had fought with honor, with patience, and with a quiet strength that had broken Victor in ways he could never have imagined. As the referee declared her the winner, Victor remained on the ground, the weight of his defeat sinking in. Eliza had humbled him. She had taken everything he had thrown at her, and she had shown him that sometimes the greatest victories are not about the power in your fists, but the strength in your heart. As the cheers of the crowd echoed through the arena, Eliza stood, victorious, not just in the ring, but in a battle for something far more profound. Victor, once a towering figure of invincibility, lay defeated not just by her punches, but by his own arrogance. The lesson was clear. True strength doesn't come from overpowering others. It doesn't come from dominating or instilling fear. Eliza's victory was a testament to the power of patience, strategy, and resilience. She didn't fight with brute force. She fought with control, with the quiet confidence that comes from knowing one's own limits and pushing past them. For Victor, this defeat was more than just losing a match. It was a moment of self-realization. His ego, built on years of unchallenged success, had crumbled. Eliza had shown him that the most powerful thing a fighter can possess isn't strength. It's the ability to remain calm and composed in the face of adversity. And for the world watching, the impact was profound. True power is not in what you can take, but in what you can endure, and how you rise when everyone expects you to fall. Eliza had won not just the fight, but the respect of all.